Both you and Claire came through Aeglagh, Vannin. How important was that to you?
Oh, tremendously. I don't think I would have been interested in music, or at least involved in music, without Aeglagh Vannin. I wouldn't have known very much about Manx, or it certainly wouldn't have gone beyond a passing interest without Aeglagh Vannin. I don't think, equally, that I would have had the confidence to go for what felt instinctively right without having had a background of Mona Douglas herself, whose determination and dedication to what she thought was right wouldn't take excuses. And I suppose I was willingly indoctrinated by her from being quite a small child, not just because of a different perspective on the island that she offered, knowing about things that most people didn't know, knowing about the island in some depth and having a feel for it. But I think as a woman, as an individual who was living her own life and going a different direction from the main flow, if you like, and believing in what she was doing, I think a tremendous role model, quite consciously. You can produce things, you can influence people, you can imagine things, and 20, 30 years down the line, they might well come into fruition. Why not? Under the influence of Mona, I don't think you've got any choice, really.
Is there any of the repertoire that you learned with Mona still in the choir's repertoire now?
Some, but less so as we go through the years. Mona Douglas is certainly part of the Manx tradition, but you can't just present Mona Douglas's songs as if that was Manx culture, so I think that's wrong. Mona was creative, and so are we, making up our own songs, using bits and pieces of things we've come across to create something new, making tunes to things that don't have tunes, words to things that don't have words. But I suppose at the beginning, when we started singing, there were quite a lot of Mona Douglas songs, one because they were just becoming accessible, quite a number of them with words that people could understand and not too many verses, and just appeared in Colin Jerry's Ceol and Tear book, so they were there. People generally, if they were going to be familiar with the songs in Manx, would probably be more familiar with the Mona type ones or the ones that were in the book. But the second thing was, and you can't get away from the importance of this in a choir, is the songs that are associated with Mona are generally very tuneful ones. They're easy to sing as a choir, they're easy to arrange, and you balance that against maybe long traditional ballad, 13 or 14 verses, which takes a particular kind of individual ballad singer to make that convincing, and is not generally as appealing to a mass market, if you like. And you're not doing it any favours to dress it up as a choir performance. So Mona's songs are songs associated with Mona, collected by Mona or made up by Mona, or combinations thereof, are quite a gift and a good starting place, I think. They certainly were for us. Now we try and have a reasonable amount of original material. In fact, it's becoming more original material than traditional material, inevitably, because there's only so much traditional material. Modern songs can touch on different things. Traditional Manx songs maybe were a bit away with the fairies, some of them, or about drowned fishermen and accidents at sea. So it's quite good in modern day. We can go into different areas if we want. There's a lot more variety. But Mona was a very, very good start to this musically and giving me individually an incentive to go and do what I want. And I'm sure if she'd been here now, she'd be absolutely thrilled that there are 2 Manx choirs. There's any amount of really, really good musicians, people writing things. And of course, in the Bun School, Aeglagh, the Manx language school, there are far more children singing songs in Manx at any one point than would ever happen while Mona Douglas was teaching Aeglagh Vannin children over that long period from the 1930s on to late 1970s. I get ideas coming over the mountain to school quite frequently in the morning when I'm driving. A phrase, or it could be a musical phrase, or talking about original ideas. I'll get a musical phrase will come to mind, or some words, or both come together. You don't really know, and it can be either. And while I remember, I jot things down and I just store things. I sometimes have ideas for arrangements, but have no idea how the words will work. And I jot things down in numerous manuscript books, and I keep finding them several years later, thinking, oh, that's all right. But at the time, you pursued it as far as it could go, and then you think, no, I can't go further with that. So there's always things lying around, but I'm not very systematic. It tends to happen. Once I get one on the go, 2 or 3 other songs will pop into my head straight away, and then you really had it for a few months. You've just got to sort of get to the end to make it worthwhile the time. It does take a lot of time to arrange music for 4-part or 5-part. You constrict it in a way more by the traditional songs. The words are as they are. You can maybe modify them a little bit, but you have to go with that. You can't alter them. If you're making your own, you can, of course, and get them to fit things more easily. Also, minor and major keys that produce different mindsets for harmony. You can be limited, but it also can be quite creative. Minor keys can throw up some quite interesting things, but they can also be quite a challenge to pull off in terms of the harmony, I've found. Certainly making your own from scratch is easier, words and music. Yeah. And going with the traditional music, some people have expectations. I mean, there's only so many things you could do to, or would want to do to the sheep under the snow and a Caarjyn, for example. A lot of people have the sort of idea of the Manx National Songbook harmony, even if they have any idea on something like that. So if you came up with something way different, it would be quite hard to go away from that. It's quite fun looking out for things that nobody's ever done before, where you might have picked a scrap or a tune that's interesting and tried to match it with something, because nobody has any expectations of how that should be, including myself, so you're a bit more free.
Annie Kissack, Gurmai Morad.
Shea the Fay.